Hi, welcome to This Reader's Life. This is episode number 2, and I'm really excited to do it. Although I will tell you that I had to really think about it when I realized that it was Nonfiction November, because I'm not a big nonfiction reader, and I thought about it for a while, and I thought, no, it's okay if I decide to do something else and I don't do nonfiction. And so then I started thinking about that, and about that time, the only thing that I could think about was nonfiction books that I've actually read. So I went back in my mind and thought about some of those books and thought, I really have read more nonfiction than I think I have. Plus, if I want to broaden my expand my territory a little bit, it's silly for me to shy away from this. So I went back through my stuff. I figured out a couple of books, and I was also a little bit disappointed because the last book that I read was The Marriage Portrait. And The Marriage Portrait is certainly based on a true story, but it is a fictionalized version of a, I believe it's a, now see, now I can't remember, it was a duchess and a duke from Italy in the 1500s, mid 1500s. And the Marriage Portrait is based in some ways on a poem called the Last Duchess or the First Duchess, something like that. But at any rate, it was a very good book. I loved the fact that it was based on a true story, but I will say that it was definitely highly fictionalized, and I enjoyed it a great deal. So I would recommend it. It doesn't qualify as nonfiction. So I went back a little bit further because I haven't read anything nonfiction for a while, and I came up with a few books. I'm going to review a couple that I have read. I'm going to talk about a couple that I'm in the process of reading, and also a couple that are at least one or two that are to be read. So all told, it'll be I think about 6 books, and we're going to start with one that I actually own, and I've had it for a long time. I don't buy a lot of books. I read mostly on Kindle. As I said, that's sort of a regret for me. But the name of the book is The Worst Hard Time, and it was written by Timothy Egan. Here is the book. You can see it. And this was one of the best nonfiction books that I read that held my interest from beginning to end. And it is about the Great American Dust Bowl, which gives it sort of a midwestern flavor. I'm in the eastern part of Kansas, and I own a little property west of here, which would have been impacted by the Dust Bowl, but not in the same way that so much of southeast Kansas, Oklahoma, the Texas-Oklahoma Panhandle, those areas were so impacted. And of course, the Dust Bowl was during the Depression, so it was sort of a double whammy. The Depression, with the crash of the stock market in the late 1920s, early 30s, was it was devastating for people who had money in the stock market and stocks and bonds, things like that. The Dust Bowl was an entirely different type of disaster, and it was environmental. It was, but it was also caused by humans, and that's something I did not realize until I started reading this book. That this book tells you about what happened, and it also tells you about people that are still living today, which I found really, really interesting. Interviews a lot of people about what they went through during that time. And there were so many things that I had never heard of before. I had heard the stories about putting newspapers or wet towels in the windows to keep the dust out. And that was about as much, and that it was a very dry time. And reading this was such an eye-opener. It was such a tragedy across the middle part of this country, unbelievable, and it affected everything, everywhere. And I've always been aware of my environment, but I've never worried about the environment the way a lot of people have. This book was a life changer for me. I will read to you something from it that which made me begin to realize what kind of an impact people have on the environment. I always thought of myself as a tiny blip, that there really wasn't very much I could do to help or hurt the environment. And I know that sounds naive, and it was naive. Um, but I'm gonna read you from this. I'm gonna put those glasses on that I don't like to talk about. Um, and this is sort of an explanation. Um, it's about a soil um, conservationist who has that did a lot of studying about it at the time. And it says, in the last years of the wheat boom, Bennett had become increasingly frustrated at how the government seemed to be encouraging an exploitive farming binge. He went directly after his old employer, the Department of Agriculture, for misleading people. Farmers on the Great Plains were working against nature, he thundered in speeches across the country. They were asking for trouble. Even in the late 1920s, before anyone else sounded an alarm, Bennett said people had sown the seeds of an epic disaster. The government continued to insist, through official bulletins, that soil was the one resource that cannot be exhausted. To Bennett, it was an arrogance on a grand scale. I don't know, I didn't know so much costly misinformation could be put into a single brief sentence, he said. So, um, it was the way that people were farming at the time that caused the problems, and that's just that realizing that made me realize how many things that we can do that are that are that are permanent or will take a long time to recover from, and that we do have a responsibility. And so this book was a wonderful book. It's well written. It talks a lot about people who are still alive today. And this was written in 2006. A lot of those people now are probably gone. So it's a wonderful piece of history, and it's a wonderful lesson, and gives you something to think about, especially in today's environment where we're seeing big changes in weather, big changes in, we've worried about the ozone, we've worried about global warming. And those aren't things that I worry about over much, but I am much, much more aware now of our impact on the environment. So I would recommend this book, highly recommend this book, and it's so readable. That makes a huge difference. So that's one book that I read. Another book that I read, which is very different from this one, is and also one that I do know. I think I owned it at one time, but I don't own it any longer. But the book is Bird by Bird, which was written by Anne Lamott. She's a wonderful writer. She's mostly an essayist. She has a couple of novels, but most of her books are sort of memoir and essay. But Bird by Bird is her book on writing, and because I've always been interested in doing some writing myself, I had read Anne Lamott prior to that. I believe it was Traveling Mercies that I read. Wonderful book about her relationship with a church, and just her general kind of her. It's almost coming of age. It is not coming of age, but it's after she was an adult. But Bird by Bird is about writing, and the things that I love about it the most. I have just number one, she's funny, she's brutally honest, and she's self-deprecating, I guess you would say. She doesn't pretend to be high and mighty. She just admits up front this is hard work, and that writing is hard. But there's a quote from the book that I will read that it made me laugh. She's got a wonderful sense of humor, and she sees the humor in things that that I can truly relate to, and that I think most people can relate to. She's, again, it's that honesty that is so, and that how often the things that are that seem tragic have got just a tinge of humor to them, which makes them bearable, especially when you can see that humor. But one of the things that she wrote in Bird by Bird, it's a short quote. Remember that you own what happened to you. Just put it down on paper, everything you can remember now about your parents and siblings and relatives and neighbors, and we will deal with libel later on. So that's what she had to say about getting down your feelings. And I love the way she talks about libel, because she makes mention of the fact that if the people you write about, if they were hoping to be written about warmly, that they probably should have behaved better, which makes me giggle. Um, so that's two books that I have read that qualify as nonfiction. Two books that I have started reading, um, and I'm surprised at how much I've liked them. One of them is Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which is, I can't believe I haven't already read it because it was wildly popular. Probably Reese Witherspoon. She may have been in the movie. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie either. But and my husband and I, in the past, we hiked quite a bit, so we've always enjoyed that, and I certainly can relate to what it feels to get out in the woods, or going up hills and making your way. At one time, different things that happened to you. I know that my husband and I my husband once, I always say, saved my life. There was a rattlesnake on the trail that I just flat didn't see, and he saw it just before I did and moved me so quickly out of the way. But at any rate, Wild is something I'm really looking forward to reading, and the fact that hiking and being on your own in nature is restorative or restorative. Um, I think that's a big part of what I think I'll enjoy about the book. And again, as I said, I think so many people have read it, but so far, what little bit I've read of it, I'm enjoying a lot. The other book that I'm reading is really obscure, but I was so surprised by how much that I've enjoyed it. Um, it is called The Honeycomb. I do not have a copy of it, and I remembered it when I was trying to think about books that I had read in the past that were nonfiction. And I had not read that one in the past, but I had tried to read it when I was really quite young, maybe 10 or 11, maybe 12. And and it was on my mom's bookshelf. She belonged to the Doubleday Book Club, and she had a lot of she read a lot of different kinds of books. She also worked at the library when I was a teenager, clear into when my kids were little. I used to take them to the library to see my mom. But this book, the name of the book is The Honeycomb, and it is by Adela Rogers St. John. I remembered that Mom had it, and I remembered the name of Adela Rogers St. John's. There's an S on the end of that. Um, in England, it would probably be pronounced St. John or St. John's, or on the, yeah, in England. But um, I wanted to find this book. I could not find it on Amazon. I could find it online. The hardcover book, which I remembered the hardcover dust cover so well, is $75. And I thought, well, I'm probably not going to read it that way. So I started checking libraries, and I found something sort of by accident online that is called the Open Library. It's openlibrary.org. Some of you may already know about it, but if you don't, it's very interesting. It's part of archive.org. That's what my cuckoo clock just cuckooed. I always keep it running because once it loses time, coordinating the cuckoo and the time is so difficult. Plus, it plays music as well. At any rate, the Honeycomb, I found it on what was I saying? Openlibrary.org, and it was that's part of archive.org, and it's a huge database of all kinds of books, and you can check those out online. They're a little bit difficult to read online, or the one that I have is difficult. It's truly pictures. There is a way to flip through the pages, but it's certainly not like reading a book on Kindle at all, or a regular book. You can tell that these are the actual pages, but reading them online and flipping through them online is pretty interesting. But the book itself, Adela Rogers St. John's, was a reporter. She was born, I wrote it down so I could remember, and now I can't see it, of course, 1894 to 1988. So she was born prior to the turn of the century and died prior to the turn of the century, the next century. She was the daughter of an attorney who was well known, and the attorney was a friend of William Randolph Hearst, who was the newspaper mogul. Who he was very rich later. He was the grandfather of Patty Hearst. For if any of you remember her kidnapping, and she actually covered that. Adela Rogers St. John's did, She was a reporter. She became a reporter at 18. William Randolph Hearst gave her a job and gave her her start. Um, and her stories are absolutely fascinating. She covered World War One. She covered World War Two. She covered part of. She was around for part of Vietnam. By then, she was so popular that you can actually find an old um, YouTube video of her on the Johnny Carson's show. And she was so delightful, so fun to listen to. She had a great personality. And she wrote her autobiography, The Honeycomb, in 1969. And she also she did so many things, but I've just started the book. I'm about 100 pages in, and I am completely obsessed. I cannot stop reading this book. I am dying to get to the end of it, and I hate thinking about getting to the end of it. And after that, I can see myself reading her other work. She wrote a few novels. She also worked for. She lived in Hollywood. She went to Hollywood High School, but she lived in Hollywood for some time, and whoever it was, and I don't know what the gentleman's name was, who started the magazine Photoplay, and Photoplay um, was like I'm trying to think what it would have been like that you could. When I was a kid, there was Tiger Beat magazine. Well, Photoplay was a movie magazine. It was sort of like that. And Adela Rogers, St. John's, she was trying to stay home. With her two children, and she was offered the job of interviewing occasionally movie stars, and she had access and she had a press pass, and with that she decided to take that on because she only had to do a couple a month, and the owner of Photoplay offered to pay her $35 per article, and then $2 or $2.50 anytime she could come up with a little blurb that could be used that was true. And she had quite a bit of access to that particular society at that time. Hollywood was just beginning. It was mostly silent pictures, and it was just Lillian Gish and Mary Pickford. But I am enjoying this book so much. I'm very, very excited about it, and I will probably talk some more about it in my next video. I can hear my dog doing little growls out in the other room. And I'll introduce. His name is Truman, and I will introduce you to Truman someday. He needs a bath right now, and he's a busy little dog. He's a tiny guy, a big part of our lives. We love Truman. Then my to be reads. One of them is Prairie Earth, which is written by Prairie Least Heat. I'm sorry, William. For goodness sakes. It is written by William Least Heat Moon, and I've got the book. I will show it to you. And I've had it for a long time, but I've never actually read all the way through this book. And it's called A Deep Map, and what it is it's sort of a dive into Chase County, Kansas. It's one county, and he pretty much does it quadrant by quadrant, section by section, and talks about the history, what's there now, what was there then, and any historical happenings or historical people who were involved during different times, indigenous as well as settlers, and some of it's not super interesting, but it's so well written, and I'm looking forward to reading that. I've just kind of flipped through it, and I can see where once when I was doing some kind of research for something that I was writing, I highlighted a few spots in the book. So that's one of the books that I'm wanting to read. The other one that's on my TBR is Lewis and Clark, Voyage of Discovery, because I think, and I've had this book for a long time. I bought it at a used bookstore, and I think it probably had a cover at one time, but I don't have it. But it's a large book, and it looks like it's just really well, you might be getting a shine on that, but it looks like it's well illustrated, and that there are some beautiful photographs. I don't want to, that's dark. Well, I don't know if you can see any of this, but it's got some really, really beautiful photographs in it. So that's what, and Lewis and Clark is a huge part of American history, and that I don't know a lot about. There's a lot of it I probably knew at one time and I've forgotten, but for Nonfiction November, those are the books that I have read and am reading now, and that I'm looking forward to reading in the future. And the other thing is I'm thinking really hard about my next video. I'm hoping that I can make connections with people who care about the same kind of reading, and also connections with people that read completely different than I do, because I'm constantly, I watch YouTube just as much as I can. I'm a little less lately because I've been thinking so hard about nonfiction books for November. But at any rate, I am really excited to go on with this, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. If you enjoy this, and if you want to come back, I hope you do. If you'd like to subscribe, like, or follow, of course, that would be hugely appreciated. And until next time, be kind, be gentle to yourselves, to others, and to the earth. And have a great week. Bye-bye.